welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where I'm delighted to be joined by the fabulous Josef Stetter. Josef, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. Okay.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. They've got so much insight to share. But before we get stuck in, as I know I will get carried away in the conversation, let me tell the people watching and listening a little bit more about you. So Josef is known as the resume whisperer, and he's a corporate culturist. He helps individuals land their dream job and companies hire the right fit people and keep them. For over 16 years, he's incorporated humour, energy, passion, and full self-expression into his personal and professional life, which has resulted in him being an award-winning and international best-selling author of 11 books, an award-winning speaker and Guinness World Record participant. And he works with clients including Deloitte & Touche, Canon, Aviva, Skechers Shoes, and so many more, and has personally helped over 11,000 people find a job they love. And the fastest you've ever helped somebody land their dream job is 2 days. That's quite an achievement. 2 days is quite a turnaround, Josef.
Sorry, my daughter just said something. So authentic conversation right off the bat.
Really?
So yes, and thank you for that. I think I started in terms of, I didn't know what I want to do when I grow up. And so, I come from, my father comes from communist Romania, very traditional, work for 35 years, keep your head down, and eventually retire. Somewhere along the lines, that conversation disconnected with me completely because I did jobs to please my parents. I did jobs, I studied sciences all throughout high school. The day I finished high school, I'm like, I don't like sciences. And so my parents were like, okay, go do something that's a good career. So go study finance. I didn't know any better. I'm like, okay, I worked in finance for 7 years. You could not pay me $1 million to ever work in a bank again. And I kind of got to the position where I took a job, I became the best in the company at it or achieved certain measures, and I got bored. So whether I quit or I stopped caring and I got fired, I kind of switched careers 9 times and then jobs more than 18 times before I discovered what I truly love, which is making a difference in the world and really helping people. So I started on the path of self-development in terms of doing the Tony Robbins Walk of Fire. And I'm both blessed and cursed where I can figure out stuff extremely quickly. And so he spent 6-7 hours preparing us to walk on 40, 50 feet of burning coals without getting injured. And the exercise is very powerful, but because I got it so fast, I think I got what his intention is within about a half hour. And I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm ready. But people are bawling their eyes beside me. And when we finally did the walk, it was such an adrenaline, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just walked on, burning coals and my feet got dirty, but nothing happened to me. And then I started reflecting, saying, how come nobody's applying some of these principles to job finding? How come nobody's applying this to understanding how to grow in a company, for example? Because, if you have the same education as somebody else, why are they getting promoted and you're not? What are the nuances, both in the technical skills as well as the character skills that are missing? And so I started a path where I started doing lectures for free and working with government agencies to help, let's say, new immigrants land a job. And over the time of switching careers 9 times and jobs 18 times, I started investing more and more into learning that I think I've invested over 30,000 hours to learn everything there is to know about job finding. And in the process, I worked for a recruiting company. In my first year, I generated for them $760,000 in revenue. My supervisor had been there for 11 years, generated $140,000. Wow. To reward me for generating $750,000, the owner gave me cheese and crackers. Literally, cheese and crackers. And I looked at her and went, "What's this?" And she's like, "It's your bonus." And I looked at her and said,
Yes.
do I look like I'm 65 years old? That I need, like, the cheese was from a very high-end grocery store where, you know, they tried cow and whatever other kind of stuff. I'm like, do I look like I'm 65 years old that I need cheese? Sadly, the crackers were from like a dollar store. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need you. I've brought you all new business, all relationships that I've built. I'm going to open my own business. And I opened my own recruiting firm. And I spent 3 months kind of preparing the branding, the messaging, the service level, the extra value. And in my first month, I made $143,000. And I was like, okay, time for a 5-week vacation. And, you know, that kind of led me to yo-yo and entrepreneur. And then I had a business partner that taught me a $360,000 plus life lesson that completely derailed my opportunity, because not only did she steal money from me, but this happened right after the 2009 crash, where all of a sudden my biggest clients downsized over 1,500 people and put a 3-year freeze on hiring. And so I went from having 60 plus orders a month to 0 overnight. And so I had to reinvent myself, and I had to kind of figure it out. And that led me to being a corporate culturist and the resume whisperer.
I love that. Well, not I love that. I mean, you've had some awful experiences, but what you've done is you've taken those experiences and taken the lessons within them. Because I think one of the things that I've found in life is that it only really makes sense in the rearview mirror, doesn't it? It's only when you look back and you go, oh, okay, that happened so that I could learn this, so that I could develop this level of resilience, so that I could realize that actually the path might not always be clear, but as long as we keep going and we keep learning, the path will come into view. And you're taking that and not just doing it for yourself, but you're actually able to now do that for other people to help them find their path in their career. Because it's not always that easy, is it, to navigate where should I be and what do I want to do?
I think society as a whole, is still a few decades behind, because the education system globally is preparing students today for the Industrial Revolution. We are now in the technological revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a lot of students that are bored out of their mind because, you know, giving them a piece of paper, go fill it, when they can go on their phone, Google the information, and, you know, you're not creating critical thinkers. You're not creating people that understand that. So a lot of times, the first thing I do, if I speak to an individual that's kind of like, let's say, worked for 20 years for the same company, and all of a sudden, because of age, because of whatever circumstances, find themselves unemployed, is start defining what they like, what they're passionate about. You know, my father passed away 13 years ago. And I remember he once said to me that, like, you know, I always asked him, he worked as a civil engineer, he worked all over the world. And he chose sometimes to work for, we'll call it, horrible bosses, because he was providing for the family and taking care of them. And I admire and respect him for that. But he always communicated with me, like, if you, let's say, love music, even if you gig once a month and you make $100 from it, or £100 in the UK, you'll probably enjoy that 100 more than your entire salary. So don't completely eliminate it from your life. Now, what people don't realize is that a lot of these talents, all of these skills, all of a sudden there's industries that need that. There's demand for that. There is, you know, like, wellness in corporate culture is not just I mean, it is, but it is not just a buzzword in terms of, you know, employee retention, in terms of, you know, not having a heart attack and dying, not this, where it's so work that we forget, you know, let's take back. So in North America, there's kind of the East Coast mentality versus the West Coast mentality. And the best way to explain it is, in the East Coast, it's called the rat race, because if your boss asks you to come in on the weekend, you look at your boss and say, for how long do you need me? In the West Coast, the mentality is, when your boss tells you to come in on the weekend, is no, the weekend is my time. I don't work on the weekend. And there's a huge discrepancy where companies are trying to push more and more, like, do this, do this, do this. And it's not just the Excel spreadsheet,
Yeah.
it's, I don't know if in the UK they have a show called Undercover Boss. It is
Yeah.
one of my favorite television shows. I'm always amused at the end of the show when the executives go, oh my God, I should speak to the people that work here. I might get some insights. And, executives are forgetting that people need the water cooler conversation. People need that coffee break or tea break where they could talk about television and music and that, because it refreshes the brain. And so there's so much time looking at profits and losses and not looking at how are we treating our people? How are we, understanding what our people care about, how to, keep them engaged, get them to buy in. On the top, let's say 10 reasons why somebody leaves a job, salary is actually number 7.
Yeah.
The number 1 reason is how people are being treated or lack thereof. And so this is how I also became the corporate culturist, because I started understanding that I'm doing recruiting. That's how I kind of build my foundation. But in 20 years of recruiting, I've maybe replaced 5 people under warranty. And my warranty is usually a full year, where the industry standard in recruiting is 3 months. Now, the reason being is because I believe in transparency. I believe in letting you know what you're getting into without breaking confidentiality, but to the level that I don't have to deal with surprises that, oh my God, this is a horrible work environment, because I warned you that the salary is great, but these are things that you might have to deal with in advance. And so you're not necessarily frustrated from it. But there's also a conversation where right now, between learning management, between culture, in the next 30 years, we're talking a $40 billion industry. And companies are scrambling because the pandemic created we can get people to work from home and increase productivity because they're not stuck in traffic commuting to work. They're actually, doing work sometimes on flexible hours based on like they have kids or whatever needs, but the quality of the work is there. Now, the interesting thing is that actually in the UK, Google started testing a 4-day work week. And they ran this program that was like a 4-day work week, that in the UK, the productivity in Google increased by about 25% by having that 1 day at home, for example. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting time that we live in, because things are changing, and we've become so dependent on technology that we've forgotten the human factor. Like, I've never met any company that's hired somebody directly by going, wow, this is the perfect resume. I don't even need to speak to the person. I'll hire them. Just like, on the dating side of the world, as a quick analogy, just because somebody has a great picture on a profile on online dating platform doesn't mean that you're going to have a conversation with them. Doesn't mean that just because you can text each other for hours or have a conversation on the phone, it's the same energy face to face. And so you still have to meet the person. You still have to have that conversation with them. You still have to make sure there's a level of chemistry. It's no different than the work environment. And so I've dedicated my life to help navigate from both the individual that goes, I need a change, or I need a new career, or life just knocked me down, whatever life may be. It's a divorce, it's a downsizing, it's this, to companies going, we can't find anybody because we've posted here, but we're not really getting the people that we actually want to hire.
Yeah, I think there's so much complexity, isn't it, in leading people, and I love what you said about the kind of those water cooler moments. I remember working for one organization, and I went in to do transformational change, and they had no money, nothing, but we still needed to engage people. And so, and I'm not sure how this translates for our audience outside of the UK, but I had a trolley. And what I realized is I had got no money, I could nothing else, but I could make them tea and coffee, and I could take it to their desk. So I used to push this trolley around. I was the CEO, push this trolley around once a month for like 2 hours and make people drinks at their desk. And I learned so much in that 2 hours. And I remember taking my CFO with me one day, and he kind of went around as well, meeting people at their desk. And he came back and he went, I've learned more about the organization in the last hour than I learned in the last 13 years. And I was like, you will. You meet them where they are. You find out what's it like to be where you are, how are we treating you? What's it feel like? What is the strangest thing we ask you to do every day? Because you probably think we know, and I promise you we probably don't. And that's going to be where we find the nuggets of where we can transform the organization and take the frustration.
Look, if I may share a quick story to that, exactly. So I used to work in the banking industry, and I used to answer the phone with, "It's a great day," or "It's a fantastic day at the name of bank. My name is Joseph. How can I help you?" One of my coworkers complained that me saying "great" or "fantastic" could be interpreted as the bank is making too much money. I worked as a stock trader, right? So senior management had 3 2-hour-long meetings to discuss whether or not I was allowed to say "great" or "fantastic," and then decided it was easier to ban me from saying "great" or "fantastic" than to retrain 120 people that were kind of operating as stock traders. Now, after they banned me, one of the senior VPs came to me and said, "Listen, you have great energy. You're always positive. Morale here is really low. I would like you to create a social committee so that we can improve morale." I said, "Great. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to organize a potluck because everybody loves food." And he went, "Well, that's probably not going to work because most of the stock traders are bachelors. They'll probably just give you $5, $10 and say that they'll eat what everybody else brings." I said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And I created an Excel spreadsheet. This many people can bring drinks. This many people can bring kind of cookies. This many main courses. And I had categories. And I logged off the phone for 2 hours. And starting with the executives, I said, "I don't care if you make it, your partner makes it, your mom makes it, or you buy it. But you have to sign up for something."
Mm.
I had the equivalent of like 2, 25-person boardroom tables full of food, right? I logged off the phone the day of the potluck for 2 hours to organize the food so that the meat wasn't beside the chocolate,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example, in a logical way. Now, during the quarter, I won or came in the top 3 for 7 out of 10 contests, including answering 155 trading calls in an 8-hour shift, right? The bank refused to give me my bonus because I was logged off the phone for 4 hours during the entire quarter to organize the one thing that the VP asked me to do, right? So in terms of, VPs going, again, I'm not making the VP salaries. I'm not getting the VP's layered bonuses. So that bonus to me was quite significant. And to be told, "Yeah, it's great that you did this stuff and people are engaged." And for the next 3 months, people talked about how much variety of food it was and how amazing it was to log off the phone for a minute, go grab a cookie and come back to their desk. But then you penalized me because I actually did what you asked me to do. And this is kind of going to your story when serving tea as being of service first rather than "let me tell you," right? And that's a huge distinction between a leader and a manager, because a leader will not care that they're being replaced because people have risen, because if they've done such a great job as a leader, they'll probably get promoted to an even bigger leader. A manager is worried about losing their job, so they don't want you to be great because it makes them look bad, for example.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so there's a level where that being of service mindset, if you understand that and you understand I need to take care of my people, you don't need to pay big raises to people if somebody's driven by, let's say, education. So if you have insights or data that says this person loves learning new things, you can pay for courses that can then be used as an employee in the company, and you'll probably get more productivity than giving that person a $5,000 or £5,000 raise, for example, because their values are aligned with learning rather than money or title. And so, as being a corporate culturist, I help executives understand that when you understand your people, it's much easier to communicate clearly to them because there's a lot of people that got promoted into leadership that are, we'll call it accidental leaders, that don't know how to take care of people. They're very good at their technical or specific role, and no one's mentored them, no one's groomed them, and no one's taught them the value of, let's say, clear communication, the value of being inspired by a vision. Because, a lot of companies create these wonderful mission and vision statements. And I'm going to use, a burger joint, right? If you go to McDonald's and ask the manager at McDonald's, what is the mission and vision of McDonald's? Unless there's a plaque in front of them that they can read word for word, they probably have no clue, right? And so executives go, but we have this clear statement. And no, because it's not trickled down properly. It's not communicated in terms of how you're showing up or why people are there, other than they need a paycheck and they need, whatever, something to keep them busy. And so this is the massive disconnect where employees kind of go, I don't even know what my role is here. I don't know, like, I'm happy that I have a job. I'm happy that I'm getting a salary, but honestly, I have no idea where my responsibility ends or doesn't, because, like my brother, he's a product manager in construction. He was hired by a big construction company to redo a subway station that has historical merit. And on his first day, he got an email that said, we need CN 28, and the email was addressed to 28 people. He looked at it and went, first of all, what's CN 28? This is my first day on the job. Second of all, there's 28 people on this email. Who's supposed to respond to this email? And,
Yeah.
He was so confused on day one. So it's like, okay, you're a project manager, here you go. And there was no, yes, there was a little bit of onboarding, but the onboarding was, okay, here's your medical, here's your dental, here's your, typical paperwork that you need. Here's a sexual harassment policy. Here's a dress code. Here's this. But in terms of, here's the role that you play within the organization. Here's kind of what you are directly responsible for. Here's this. There was very little of that. And he was so overwhelmed. He was like, I literally sat at my desk and I'm like literally, that's like the way he described his day at work to me. And you're having that a lot around the world right now.
And it's been going on for years. I remember taking on a role coming up for 30 years ago, and we sat in the training, and the training was the same training for everybody, whether you were a leader or you weren't a leader. You sat through the first 2 weeks of training. And I can't tell you, Joseph, how many times during this training they went, and this is where you'd ask your team leader, and this is where you'd ask your team leader. And there was 3 of us in the room that had been brought on to be team leaders. And we're like, but who's going to tell us? Because all these people are going to come to us because this is what you ask your team leader. But we're not being given any training on how we're going to get the answer to be able to answer their question. So you've got an expectation, we've got nothing that sits in it. And I think very often, and I see it with organizations that I help now as well, there's lack of clarity of roles and responsibilities. And therefore, people don't know the part that we're expecting them to play. And sometimes they don't even know what the play is to even start to identify.
Well, I'll take it 2 steps further, because I think this is a problem both in that most job descriptions are generic, and so because they're generic, people go, I know how to do reporting, I know how to do scheduling and forecasting, I'm great for this role, right? Or I'm very energetic, I'm great for this role. So you have very generic job descriptions, and on the flip side of it, you also have very generic resumes, right? So I always like to give these 2 examples for job seekers, because the first one usually makes people laugh. The second one, the coin kind of falls and they understand it. So if you're applying to be a receptionist somewhere and you come and say, I know how to answer the phone, I hope whoever's interviewing you looks at you in shock and goes, really? A receptionist that knows how to answer the phone? We did not know that. My 4-year-old daughter knows how to press that green button and go, hello. right? And whatever conversation comes afterwards. So it becomes redundant to tell me that you know how to answer the phone. But if you tell me that in your last job, you answered 60 calls a day with 12 different lines, I can measure 60 calls a day with 12 different lines. I cannot measure, I know how to answer the phone. Now, if I use an example from my own career, I can tell you I'm an excellent salesperson. I know how to do B2B, B2C, account management, relationship building, lead generation. I've worked retail, I've done door-to-door sales, I've done car sales, I've worked in private education, I've worked in recruitment. I know how to do sales. Now, all the words I just said, those are important technical words if you're applying for a sales job that you need for the algorithms of job boards like Indeed or LinkedIn. However, I haven't proven to you that I know anything about sales because I've just told you that I've had jobs. This is what most people do. Mm-hmm. Now, if I give you a real life example, like let's say in terms of building a sales team, I was hired by a company that owns approximately 70 private colleges across Canada. They asked me to build a call center from scratch with restrictions that my team call leads that are more than 4 months old and more than, let's say, 75 kilometers from the nearest campus. Okay. And the expectation was that the team will generate approximately $300,000 in extra revenue for the year. In less than 6 months, my team did $2.25 million. Now, when I tell you that I built a team that did $2.25 million on an expectation of $300,000, it should be pretty clear to you that I know how to build a sales team, for example. But where most people fail is they kind of go, I have all these skills. So what? Right? Who cares? You know, like just because you've been a leader or you have a title as a leader doesn't mean anything, because I don't know how it is in the UK, but in North America, people love to give themselves titles. So, like, for example, I met a cashier at a grocery store that on her resume wrote financial transaction specialist. So when you're reading financial transaction specialist, you're assuming reporting, you're assuming budgeting. Cashier, right? I worked for, again, in private colleges. Many times they call the receptionist the director of first impressions. But when you hear the word director, you think leader. No, it's a receptionist, but they gave a very kind of colorful title. So there is a level where, again, titles can be one thing. You know, I've spoken on kind of both ends of the hill, like CFO. I've been a CFO for 25 years. Okay, great. Have you done any merger and acquisition? No. Have you done any complex financial modeling? No. So you're a CFO that knows the day-to-day transactional, but you don't know these skill sets. So just because you have 20 years of experience or designation doesn't necessarily mean you are qualified for, let's say, the role that I'm trying to fill in that role. And I think this is where there's a massive gap, because most job descriptions focus so much on we're the greatest company since sliced bread, and you know, you'll do this, but the you do this is so here's the keywords that we looked on the knock codes or on Indeed and auto-populated, copy and pasted, and so people go, I know how to do this, I can do this. You know, jokingly, the definition of a project manager or a project is something that has a beginning, middle, and end. So if my daughter is going to turn 4 years old at the end of May, and I organize a birthday party for her, I can call myself a project manager. I don't know how much that will fly in the corporate world, but the point is that this is how redundant some of these titles are and some of these generic qualifications, I'll call it that. You know, if you're a leader and you're doing reporting and you don't explain to me the depth of reporting you're doing, the complexity of the reporting you're doing, the size of the reports you're doing, the frequency of the reports, the level of strategy that was implemented to create revenue, to create market share, to create whatever, I don't know that you're that good at it. Just because you have a title doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, it really is about kind of bringing to life the context, isn't it? So that people can see what it is and at what level and how that pulls together. Joseph, you've shared such amazing insight, and I could chat to you all day, but I'm very conscious that we're getting close to time. Before we go, if you could go back and share with yourself, your younger self, a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think for me, I never really understood being passionate about what I do. When I first started my career, I more focused on pleasing everybody else. And I think there's a level where there's also kind of do the internal inventory of not just generic, like I like people, but what about people do you like? Is it helping them? Is it selling them? Is it, guiding them or teaching them? Because those will define your career more. And I'd say my biggest kind of, I wish I knew this sooner, is when I got into recruiting, everything I touched turned to gold. And so I never had this idea of the market might turn or something might go bad. So I never had contingencies. I I earned money, I spent it. I lived the lifestyle of the rich and famous kind of thing. And I think so. My one advice is if you find something that you're doing really well at, make sure that you, first of all, keep learning in the industry, because there's an adage in English that says the moment you stop learning is the moment you start dying.
Yeah.
Uh, and second of all, you know, start, because when you're learning, you're also investing in yourself so you can grow more. But be cognizant of that life can change in an instant, right? And so there's a level where, enjoy life. I'm not saying don't, because I'm very much in the moment sometimes, but be cognizant that tomorrow you might need that back plan B in terms of funds, in terms of resource. Like, my father passed away from cancer and a bad heart. And literally it was overnight kind of thing. And so as much as we have, family that might drive us crazy, and we have there, take the time to acknowledge them. Take the time to, regardless of, you're angry today, you've calmed down, have that acknowledgement conversation, have that you're important to me conversation on the regular. So if God forbid something happens, it's not eating you up that you never got to say these things. And again, especially now with AI and things like that, unless you're an entrepreneur, and even then, the only thing that's guaranteed in life is death. Uh,
Yeah.
so so make sure that you are cognizant of not only upgrading your skills, but have that plan B. Every successful person that I've met always says, pay yourself first. Took me a while to understand what they're talking about. You get a paycheck, take 10% of that paycheck and put it into the Joseph account, or the Kim account, for whatever it is that you want. I want to go on vacation here. So when you start putting in a little bit at a time, all of a sudden that builds. And if you put it into something that gives you compound interest, even if you're risk averse, it adds up very quickly. So, my daughter's 4 years old. When she's 8, she's going to open her own business. I don't care if she only makes $10. I want her, first of all, to learn not to be afraid of failure. And more importantly, the importance of trying and learning, so that as she progresses in life, she can follow her passion. She can follow her. Same thing with my son. And so I surround myself with people like, mentors that have done more than me, that have earned more than me, because they give me insights that might save me a few years of struggle, kind of thing. And I think that we don't appreciate the importance of these coaches and mentors to do that. If I want to lose weight, I can go and create a program of my own. There's enough resource online for free. But hiring a personal trainer and a dietitianist or nutrition can help guide the structure, because they have information, or they can ask me questions that I won't think to ask for myself. So I think that's the most important piece of advice where it's, always be asking questions and always be aware that things are changing and you're ready for that shift kind of thing.
I love that. I think it's so true. It reminds me of what I think was great advice my grandparents gave me. So my nan said, make every day a school day. And my granddad said, live each day as if it's your last and one day you'll be right. And I think somewhere in between that, they were trying to say, like, keep learning.
Yeah. I remember, I'll just say, I went, once I opened my business and I took a vacation, I went to Barcelona. And my dad said to me, if you have an opportunity to experience something, don't cheapen it. Just go enjoy it. And I paid at the time over 100 euros to kind of sit, I think 5 rows up to see FC Barcelona play. And I got to see Lionel Messi play when he was a rookie and was a substitute because he was playing with Eto'o, Kaká, Ronaldinho. And that experience of being in the stadium and trying to stand up to take a picture, the fans nearly ripped my head off because they couldn't see from my back and was like, sit down. But it's an experience I'll never forget. And my dad was like, if you're already on vacation, invest in those experiences because you'll cherish them. And so I try to, right now, my kids are very young, to create those experiences for them on the regular, where it's those moments that we laugh for hours because, we went to Jamboree and this was silly, or we went on the slide together. And so create those moments. And that's where that 10% is to invest in yourself, to experience life and the wonders of this world kind of thing.
I love that. I think one of the most important things we can do is be actively and consciously making memories. I think sometimes, certainly for me, before I had my little girl, I kind of wasn't really present in my life. I was too busy chasing the next thing, making sure that I pleased everybody that was around me. And since having her, and probably helped by the fact I had a couple of illnesses since having her, where that the length of time I could have her was in doubt. It's really made me be conscious about living in the moment and saying, actually, the thing that we're going to remember most is those moments that brought us joy, those moments where we laugh for no reason. No reason. You tell somebody else that wasn't there and they're like, oh, really funny.
Exactly.
But you kind of...
100% agree with you, Kim. And this is where I'm going to say, you know what? Yes, there's a deadline for work. There's reports as this, but suffering a heart attack and, losing your life those are the things that most people on their deathbed will regret. And so, yes, make those. And that's why I said the 10% in, like, I want to go travel. So again, traveling can be expensive. Start with, like, okay, $10, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 100 pounds, depending on your level of income. And if you do that every paycheck, before you know it, that vacation's paid for. And, it's a concept that took me a very long time to understand, that, education, read books. If you're not a big reader, there's audiobooks. Find those mentors, find those communities. And, if you, whatever career path, like you want to become an engineer, great. Find engineers in your community, go talk to them, learn about the day-to-day, learn about, key things that they would say this is important, because that's how you can level up faster. And that's how you can create, but also, I would say the one thing that is, don't fake it, faith it. Trust that whatever religion you are, that higher being, that light, will guide you and help you. But if you learn to ask for help along the ways, the right people will come into your life and say, you should focus on this, or you should focus on your energy on that. And, part of what I'm doing right now is to give back, to create that legacy of, I made a difference in the world. But to also teach my kids that, if my daughter comes and says, history is not my thing. Okay, great. I would rather that you put in an effort to get your C in history, but shine in the subjects that you love, and shine in that, because that can help lead in your passion, what your purpose is, and kind of how you will leave your legacy in the world. And, you know, I wish I had this awareness of mentors and, you know, constantly learning. And it's not just what's in the education system. It's asking questions. It's being curious. It's being a kid and, you know, having that, you know, when you wear that superhero cape and those superpower mentalities that if it's meant to be, it will work out. You know, my life has worked out like this, where I met my wife at the time that I think nothing would happen in my life. I was kind of at my lowest. And here we are, married, 2 kids, you know, and again, I only got married. It'll be 5 years in June, kind of thing. So it's brand new, but from being $500,000 in debt to I now have a $500,000 mortgage, it's a different mentality because the mortgage is a good thing. It's not, oh my God, it's I'm so glad I get to pay a mortgage right now, kind of thing. And I think that's where there's that shift of, you know, if you have a hobby, if you have an interest, if you have something, there's probably other people and you can find a community. If you go on YouTube and type in cockroach whisperer, you will actually get videos of individuals, let's say, just like the dog whisperer, that if you have a problem with in your apartment, you can call them and they will have a conversation with the cockroaches and the cockroaches will leave your apartment, kind of thing. There's a community for everything. You want to learn how to cook green tomatoes, there's multiple communities for that too. Just find the ones that serve you. And once you figure out what you're really good at, people will find you and pay you to help them.
Amazing. Joseph, you have added so much insight and people will be able to get in touch with you. All of your details will be in the show notes below. And thank you for giving us your time, your insight, and sharing such invaluable advice that we can take forward to help us all find.
Thank you for your time and for the opportunity.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Until next time, Joseph. Take care.